Hello and welcome to Music Rewind, a podcast where we look to tell the stories behind our favorite albums. I'm your host, Steve Epley, and in each episode, we invite a guest on to tell us about their favorite music album, how they discovered it, and what makes it special to them. Joining me today to kick off our Season 3 is friend of the show, Rick Hanson. Rick is a philosophy professor and also the guitarist and vocalist for the Sketchballs. Welcome, Rick, and thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Steve. And there is a certain inaccuracy in that Sketchball statement now that happened since the last time we communicated. The Sketchballs have actually broken up.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it's a long story, but basically I'm playing with a band called the Night Howls now. So there's a little, there's still some active musicianship going on.
Well, that's good. Glad you're able to keep that going.
Oh, thank you very much.
And you are a relative of some show regulars of ours and a music mentor to a few?
Quite correct. Mike Borowski and Danny Prokop are my cousins, my first cousins on my mom's side. And I'm responsible for probably much of their musical delinquency as I am their elder. And this album that we're going to talk about tonight is where it all began for me. And by proxy, in a strange and roundabout way, where it all begins for them.
Well, that's a great lead-in. So let's jump right into this. What album are you bringing to the table, and how did you discover it?
Okay, Master of Puppets by Metallica. ...1986 classic. The way I discovered it, this is a story in itself. Master of Puppets was my musical awakening. I never had my own music until the day at the end of one of the first, I'd say, the first 3 weeks of fourth grade. It was sitting out on a desk. So there's this cassette tape. And this is 1986. This is the year that the album was released, and probably the day, for all I know, it could have been the day Cliff Burton died, quite frankly. So sitting out on this desk in my fourth grade classroom is a cassette copy of Master of Puppets. Intrigued is an understatement. I look out and I see this dark, foreboding, eldritch thing with these string hands and this, graveyard and this red sky. And I'm just like, what is this? I need to know about this. And I turned to the kid who I associated ownership with and said, "Is this yours?" Yeah. "Can I borrow it?" "Oh, yeah. I immediately took it and put it in and was just, we'll talk about the ways in which I was floored, I'm sure, through the rest of the podcast. But, I don't think I could stand up until the album was over, except to flip the sides of the tape because it was two-sided tape. And, I came back to school the next day, and the same kid who I distinctly asked permission to borrow this from said, "Hey, where's my tape?" What? I had to, I'm like, you said I could borrow it. No, I didn't, one of those kinds. And so I had to rush home after school. I'm like, okay, I'll get it back. And I had to dub it onto all I had was this black and gray 60-minute blank cassette. It was supposed to be 60 minutes, which is longer than the actual album time. And it never quite fit. So there's another story that'll be connected to this. But that was my regular listening of Master of Puppets was on this dubbed copy. So there's my tale of discovery, if you will.
Oh, that's great. Personally, I'm glad you brought this one in because I hadn't listened to it in full in such a long time. Certain songs are always in the regular playlist, they kind of come up, but I hadn't given it a full listen in quite a while, and it was just wonderful to revisit it. I had forgotten how good it actually is.
Yeah.
And I forgot how long the songs were.
Yeah.
The shortest is first track, but then there's like 3 or 4 tracks that are over 8-minute song by themselves.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that to me was one of the things that defined Metallica, that it was the hardest and heaviest thing I had ever heard up to that point. And I should probably say, I mean, I said 4th grade. I was 9 years old in 4th grade. And so that was my first experience with thrash because there was no internet. You know,
Yeah.
there's whatever you found in the grocery store and the magazines, basically. And they didn't really talk much about Metallica in Circus or Metal Edge at that time. Um, and that was my world, you know? And so it was my first time hearing what thrash was all about. But you go back and you realize like how much progressive stuff is in that album too, and how many classical influences are in the album, and those I think are the things that I come back to and that just blow me away every time.
That's one of the things I love about this early Metallica is that, going from Kill 'Em All through those first several albums, there's such an evolution of, they're learning and refining their craft,
Yes.
and Master of Puppets is a wonderful product of that,
Mhm.
and talked about that in our Ride the Lightning episode, how that was such a huge step from Kill 'Em All
Oh, yes.
due to Cliff Burton and his influence on the band.
Yes.
And like you said, with that classical influence, you hear these interludes, not just at the beginning of the songs, but they'll break into classical interludes in a metal fashion at very key points of several songs, and it's fantastic.
Yes. Yes. So, yeah, I think about the only song that doesn't really have anything of that nature is Thing That Should Not Be.
Which is its own epic storytelling
Yeah.
type of thing in itself.
It's an invocation of Cthulhu, essentially. It's like we did it musically on Ride the Lightning, and now we're gonna add the lyrics here.
They they do have a thing for Lovecraft.
Yes, they do. Or they did anyway.
So you were already listening to rock and metal at the time, right? Is that what I
No,
guess?
no.
No?
I okay. It was I was 9.
Yeah.
This was my calling. Up until that time, I remember hearing "Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap" by AC/DC on the radio as a very small kid and going, "This is what I like." This is yeah, there's something about this, and not really knowing what it was, but being, 4 or 5 and going, "This is my favorite song." And, just always thinking that there was something lacking. My parents listen almost exclusively to this day to top 40 stuff from the 1960s, like freaking Bobby Vinton and, Frankie Valli and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, that is its own thing. But when that's your whole musical universe, it's just informed by that. It's a very, very limiting paradigm, to say the least. And so nothing of that sort had ever made its way in until Metallica. So I have that sort of root and like those little experiences of AC/DC or seeing an album cover, or actually there's one other thing. I'm sorry. I was intrigued very much and I could never get a hold of it. My parents wouldn't actually let me listen to certain things. I was able to get away with Master of Puppets because the dubbed copy that I heard cut out the swear words in Damage Incorporated.
Really?
Yes. My parents raised a red flag even at "Listen, damn it," in Welcome Home Sanitarium. They were like, "Well, wait a minute, where are they going with this?" Even though my father swore like a sailor, still does. Uh, yeah.
But like the lyrics of Master of Puppets, the track that was okay to them, just,
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah, it's about
you know,
drugs, what
drugs, yeah.
yeah, exactly. Chop your breakfast on what? Oh, those are those things you win at the state fair anyway, right? There's
I mean, granted, it's not in favor of drugs,
no,
it's an anti-drug
certainly
song, so
not.
maybe they zeroed in on the message.
Yeah, could be. And I think their concern was largely this that it didn't have any swears or sexually explicit stuff in it at that time.
Okay.
There was maybe a sprinkling of Satanic Panic, but not.
I guess that was the era, wasn't it? The
Nope.
satanic
Oh,
panic era, yeah.
most definitely. And I was gonna say the thing that I was intrigued by before that I wasn't really allowed to have was there were some middle school kids that lived up the street from me that would skateboard. And whenever they'd tolerate my presence, I'd be up there trying to skateboard with them. And this was the summer previous to my discovery of Master of Puppets. And they would listen to mostly hardcore punk. Like I could discern now that it's hardcore punk. I have no idea what it was at the time. I was just like, yeah, it's loud stuff that swears a lot. I like it, But it wasn't. It didn't. captivate me the way that I think that progressive and well-formed and classically inspired stuff that Metallica was doing. And then I found out that Metallica was into skateboard. It's like, yes, my two worlds are converging, you know? This is
They were? I didn't know that.
yeah. Yeah, James broke his wrist, I think not it was right around that time, skateboard.
Interesting. Yeah, I had no
Yeah,
idea.
I remember seeing pictures. So one of the first pictures I ever saw was Hetfield with a cast. And they did designs like Pusshead, that artist that they worked with so many times, designed a few boards. I remember actually salivating over some Metallica decks that were in some of the local skate shops around that time.
I'm envious that you got to discover this as a 9-year-old
Yes.
brand new. That's pretty amazing. I'm of the generation where I'm one of many, I'm not gonna say everyone. We discovered Metallica in reverse.
Yep.
So with MTV, you had the Black Album, so you had Enter Sandman, you had Nothing Else Matters in them, and so it was a bit of a, "This is amazing," and then you go, backwards, you got And Justice for All,
Mhm.
while also, then you got Load and Reload. It's like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this is alright.
Yeah.
Okay,
Just
this is
different band.
different," and then you keep going back in time, and
Mhm.
it keeps getting better.
Yep.
So that was kind of a neat way that we all discovered,
Yeah.
Metallica, but I didn't really dive into Master of Puppets as an album or Ride the Lightning, those 2,
Mhm.
until after high school for me. My roommate,
Mhm.
in the Army was a guitarist,
Mm.
and he just lived and breathed the great guitarists,
Mhm.
he had a wide range from, say, Kirk Hammett to Yngwie,
Mhm.
and he tried to get me to learn and tried to get me to understand it all, and I couldn't. It just wasn't it's not in my skill set
Yep.
to be able to play, but I appreciate it, and that's where I really kind of learned all those other songs, getting into, Sanitarium and others,
Yep.
and that's really the Orion, just
Mhm.
really pulling out the great ones that, I hadn't really paid attention to before, because before it was always Battery, Master of Puppets, and then the album.
Stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then the album, because there's always other stuff going on, but with my roommate Zach at the time, he was really, "Man, you need to listen.
Yep.
You can you heard it, but you didn't listen."
Mhm.
So, for all you music fanatics out there, here's a great podcast to add to your must listen list. Nakedly Examined Music is a podcast about songs and songwriting. In each episode, Mark Linsenmeyer speaks with a songwriter about 3 of their songs, which you get to hear in full. Nakedly Examined Music explores what motivates creative decisions at every step of a song's creation, from the initial idea to the final recording. It also provides a picture of how a songwriter's work has changed over the course of their career. This is the ideal context for introducing you to new music, and you're going to come away from the podcast with many new favorite songs. You're also going to learn about legendary artists, and you'll get filled in on scenes and genres that you always felt like you should know more about. You may come away a better listener and a more inspired creator. Start listening today wherever you listen to your podcast, the link in the show notes, or find the show at nakedlyexaminedmusic.com. So, walk me through the album, how you listen to it.
Sure, sure. Okay, so I'm trying to uncover all of it's almost I've been doing this for months ever since you invited me, so graciously invited me to this, but just sort of the archaeology of my listening, if you will, if that makes any sense.
It does, and I wanna hear. Let's go.
Yeah, so 9-year-old me in 4th grade going through some really tough times just with a lot of different things. And, basically, I mean, to summarize it and not to make it into a pity party, the school I went to's idea of discipline was essentially a Skinner box. And I was somebody that was beaten hard against the walls of said Skinner box. And the walls were starting to beat back real hard that year. And so I'm experiencing a lot of that. Again, that's what I think attracted me to that image on the cover. I put it on and I hear that classical intro to Battery that, there's the bass and guitar in there. And I don't know if that's an 8-string bass, but there's definitely like those low tones. And then there's that, I don't know if it's a nylon string, but damn it, it sounds like a nylon string doing that duet. And to me, it put me in this strange camp of medieval warriors. It's like they're sitting around the fire and this is what they will play.
That's a great image. Yeah.
Master of Puppets is extremely evocative for me. So there's this camp of medieval warriors, and it just, that right away there's this dark, foreboding, like the fire is crackling in the background, and then that, boom, da da da, come in with the drums and the electric stuff, and that's when the enemy attacks. In the middle of the night, like, and then it's on. And it's just like this, when that heavy part kicks in battery, it's like you are getting psyched up for battle. This is do we have any censorship in terms of our language
No,
on this? Okay.
no.
Okay.
I mark all these episodes as explicit. So
Excellent. I'm glad to hear
speak
that.
your mind.
I shall. All right. So, it is fucking on. The enemy has arrived and they are hitting us hard, and we are going to hit them back harder. And it's just that, so here's me pounding against the Skinner box, discipline and bullying and all kind of shit like that going on in my school. And it's, returning the reaction. Like that was that line, like right there. We are ripped and torn away. We're taking it. We are fucking taking it, but we are dishing it out twice as hard. And just that music is twice as hard as anything that I'd ever heard. Just that speed right away. And then, and to me, battery is just a taste. It's like there's this initial salvo, everybody's, this initial fight. It's almost a skirmish. And then the real battle gets with the title track. I was so grateful that they invoked it in that season of Stranger Things this summer. Like,
I was going to make the joke that, so you discovered this album recently, right? Yeah. Along with, a third of the population of the earth.
Right. Yeah. No kidding. Oh my God. Yeah. I'm about as old.
Fantastic scene. That was great. They
yeah.
really did that well.
They did it. Absolute justice.
I felt vindicated a little bit as I'm watching that with my wife. And as soon as it started, I'm like, that's Master.
Yep. Although the snob in me said, I wish they would have done Damage Incorporated. But might have fit the scene just a little bit better. But so, then Master is the war. And it is, I'm 9. I didn't have a copy of the lyric sheet by the second time I'd heard this, because I had to give the original, we call them original tapes, the ones that, you had to buy and not just dub. And I didn't have that. So I didn't have any of the liner notes or anything like that. I had no idea what the hell they were saying, what the song was about. I noticed they're saying master, and like pulling your strings. The Master of Puppets, I'm Dorius Gray. I always thought he was saying that.
Well, the drug interludes of Master, that's one that I picked up on very quickly, as far as it was obvious to me. Now I run through you, now I rule you too.
Oh yeah, yep.
I will occupy, I will watch you die. Those were just very blatant anti-drug, and I don't know their lifestyle during this time. I don't know if they were into it or not into it, or if they had friends that influenced that as far as had bad experiences.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it was pretty obvious.
They were clearly around a lot of it. But that was not obvious to me at that age. I just knew there was something greater controlling this person that was singing this, And I would, again, I heard half the lyrics just very, very just like the "Just Call My Name 'Cause I'll Hear You Scream." That was where I went, "I'm 9. Just call my name Desalius Gray." That's what it was. Like, okay, the master's name is Desalius Gray, and if I invoke this guy, I'm in trouble. Something like that. And then, like, I was probably 10 or 11 before I figured out it was, "Oh, 'cause I'll hear you scream." You know?
One of the things I liked about Metallica and these albums was that I could understand him. I mean,
Mhm.
Hetfield has his growl,
Yes.
and that is his style, but this was heavy metal music that I could understand.
Yes.
I could hear the lyrics, I could hear them. It wasn't like, I mean, like, I love Pantera, but
Yes.
that style of the screaming, whether it's
Mhm.
Iron Maiden or other things, I can't understand half the chorus, so I'm just kind of mumbling my own things. But Metallica, I could actually get those lyrics.
And I think some of it, I got it when I was 10 or 11, but I think some of it was just being 9. You hear
Oh, yeah, the
lyrics or
metaphors probably went over your head.
yeah,
Definitely.
message definitely like I said, there's somebody being controlled by something here, like I'm being controlled by my school.
That's I mean, however you wanna imprint it, I mean, everyone
Yeah.
has, different ways of putting that on there, yeah.
Yeah, and just that song at that time, more than anything else, was the one that spoke to me. And Battery was that intro initial salvo. Master of Puppets has it all. That furious introduction, which was one of the first things that I learned how to play on guitar. And then that all of those interludes, you know, and those guitar harmonies. And the one thing that bugged me about Stranger Things is right after the solo, there's just this thrashed out riff that only occurs one time in the song. And that the drummer in my band, we were actually together in the Sketchballs and in the Night Howl simultaneously. Long story, but he and I were talking about this, and it was like there are certain things you hear that make you automatically want to headbang. That riff right there after the solo, every time. I just remember literally thrashing around in my room to that constantly. And it's the most, to this day, it is one of the most brutal things that I've heard in the best way possible. Just that riff. And it's right before what I call like the bouncy riff, the extremely classical inspired one. So there's this thrash, like, like thing. And then there's the like, da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, like that very
Mhm.
classical. And I picture a string quartet, and it actually does sound like you're bouncing a bow on a cello or something like that a little bit if you listen to
Yeah,
like
I can imagine
yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah. Then when I actually did play strings, I used to do that. Like, okay, let's get this rhythm, like that sort of thing. So that classical thing and just all the like there's the before that, there's the breakdown in it. And that breakdown was just like, there it's that quieter, clean guitar with the broken chords, and then the harmony solo, that
Mhm.
melodic, like, da 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 da, that every time I was just like, it's like you've just been flung out into outer space or something. That's how I took it, is you're just in this very strange, beautiful, dangerous world at the same time. And there's I mean, I could go on I could probably do an hour on that song if you'd like, Steve.
There's definitely, the advantage of having the 2 guitarists, that can
Mhm.
both play lead. I mean, both are world-class guitarists.
Yes.
I don't know, do they consider themselves one lead, one rhythm as Metallica
Ye
themselves?
the way that I've always heard it in interviews and things like that, I mean, James Hetfield, even, Dave Mustaine was an original member of
Mhm.
Metallica, of course, and I kind of agree with Dave Mustaine that the holy trinity of Metallica is him, Hetfield, and Burton. So I'm old school to that extent, I guess. As much as I admired Kirk Hammett like right off the bat. He was my go-to person like from, you know, the fall of 1986 and then it was him and Slash when I first saw Guns N' Roses when that album came out in the spring of '87. But that's another story. Have me back for AFD. How about that?
There we go.
Yeah. But Appetite for Destruction for those that didn't get the acronym. But that's my other pillar actually. My the two pillars of my early musical experience are Master of Puppets and Appetite for Destruction.
You can't go wrong with those two.
Yeah, and it was a year, well, more than a year between the release of Appetite for Destruction and then Justice for All. So we had 86 Puppets, 87 no Metallica activity. Activity, but not an album because bass player died for one thing.
True.
And one of the principal architects of their sound. And then Justice in 88, but Mustaine, for all of the stuff that you can look up and, Some Kind of Monster and all that kind of stuff, all the friction he's had to this day in interviews, he will say myself, Hetfield, and, Malcolm Young are the finest rhythm guitar players on this planet. And I completely agree with that. For Hetfield he is a rhythm guitarist and a riffer. He can pull off harmonies, but he ain't a shredder when it comes to the lead stuff.
Okay.
It is all wrist downstrokes. It is rhythm, some melody, but you can't just pop him in a room and be like, okay, dude, just go shred the hell out of that solo. He ain't gonna do it the way that Hammett would, or of course Mustaine, or even Robert Trujillo, right? Their current bass player. I mean, have you ever seen that guy play guitar?
No, no.
No, he's amazing to say the least. But yeah, so no, they're usually rhythm band with rhythm guitarist with harmony support and vocals. I mean, without Hetfield's vocals, come on,
Yeah.
what was that, right?
Yeah.
And then Hammett is the lead player.
Okay.
And yeah, recruited from Exodus, of course, after Mustaine had his behavioral problems in New York City.
Too drunk for Metallica. That's
Yeah, like Steven Adler getting kicked out of Guns N' Roses for drugs.
famously too drunk for Metallica, which was
Too drunk for Metallica. Yep.
But Megadeth, great band in its own right.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And yeah, that's a whole other. Anyway, shall we keep going through like tracks?
Go for it.
Okay. So Master of Puppets in all of its wonderful progressive 8-minute plus glory, right? For me, historically, as much as I get the Cthulhu lyrics now, Thing That Should Not Be was initially a bit of a letdown.
Okay.
There's this furious stuff, and then it just kind of cooled off. Nine-year-old me, it's seething anger beneath the surface, I guess. It's probably the best way I can do Thing That Should Not Be. Seething evil, right? It's
Seething is a good word because I mean it's a breather for a bit.
yes, yes,
From a listener perspective and from the 9-year-old anger, perspective, that's while you're taking a breath, that anger could be seething under the surface and getting ready to boil up.
yes. And the whole song just seethes to me, and it doesn't ever break into the kind of melodic interludes that a lot of the other stuff does. And it doesn't have the just sheer thrash aggression that a lot of the other stuff does. It has its own kind of beauty, and I've come to appreciate it. But early on, I was always like, oh, yeah, that's the one I'm going to fast forward. So I'm sitting there in my Walkman in the car when my parents got the Beach Boys going. I'm like, how much longer do I have to hear freaking, the Good Vibrations? Yeah. So, and no offense, Brian Wilson is a damn genius. I am not, trying to, but I cannot listen to the Beach Boys to this day. My sister will tell you the same thing. My brothers will probably say the same thing. We literally, it's some kind of classical conditioning. We feel car sick. My father's a terrible driver. It's another story, but
I mean, to touch on that, I don't need to listen to their hits anymore.
okay.
I mean, those are part of, American lexicon so much they've been
Oh, yeah.
beaten in your head, but I can sit and listen to Pet Sounds straight through, and
Yeah.
it's a fantastic album. I mean, because all the stuff that you never hear on the
Yep.
radio, that stuff is, and that's probably my cousin Alan, his implanted music
Yeah.
snobbery on me. So I'll claim it.
Hey, that's all right. I am I will
But
own my
the beachy stuff, let's go, surfing
yes.
and stuff. Yeah, yeah, I don't care, but I can listen to the whatever the name of that studio band, because it wasn't really the Beach Boys. It was,
No.
Brian Wilson's studio
Yep.
orchestra. They were amazing.
Yeah.
So
There's some Wilson himself again, and then, well, but that was the stuff that I was running away from big time when I was, running toward puppets.
mhm.
And but thing that should not be was something that as a kid I would definitely fast forward. And it's taken me a much longer time to come around to it and to appreciate it. And then I will tell you about my breakup with Metallica. That's another story. But we'll get to that. And then of course, Welcome Home Sanitarium. For the first 4 or 5 years of my acquaintance with Metallica, I only heard the song right up to Got Some Death to Do in the end. There you go, Got Some Death to Do, because that's where my tape cut off.
Oh man.
Yes. So I didn't get to hear the final solo with that just blistering
Oh
30
yeah.
notes and everything. Nope, nope. No, the ending of it, it would cut off there. But that song, oh, I'm in the Skinner box, locked away in the detention rooms and things like that. Welcome to where time stands still. No one. I mean, it just labeled mentally deranged. Yep, yep. I was like, these people get me. And the intro to Sanitarium was about the second thing that I learned on guitar too. Uh,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
the intro and that melodic lead solo. Mm, and that song again, it brought back in, I guess, that richness and complexity that, you know, thing that should not be is more, it's a steady seething rhythm, just a dun 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 dun.
Mhm.
And then there's those progressive flights of fancy, if you will, that strange dark universe that you hear in the classical interludes of puppets. And now it's being brought out in this way that I was like, okay, this is breathing again. This is going somewhere instead of just that steady drone of dun 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 dun. That song was a great comfort to me. Again, in that really personal level of that. This is the stuff that I'm up against. This is the way that I'm feeling because I'm in it. I felt, you know, rightly or wrongly, I felt institutionalized in that way. And I'm not trying to discount the experience of people that were institutionalized formally in a much worse way than I was. But I had a lot of that feeling just with their Skinner box approach to discipline. In fact, I was labeled emotionally disturbed by the kind administration of my school. And the way that they did it was they would lump anybody that was a problem, whether it was a developmental disability, whether it was just behavioral thing, anybody that was labeled mentally deranged. And we were chucked off into this classroom that like had all this shame and stigma about it. It was like, don't talk about that class. So it was very much the first rule of Fight Club, right? It was almost that kind. It's like, nope, nope, you didn't talk about it. And I saw other kids because you'd have to have these little goal cards they would give you. Oh my God. Then they'd write a smile or a frown on it. And how many frowns or smiles you got was,
Oh jeez.
yeah, this is whether you got chucked in the ED class. We called it a slur, and I won't use slurs, but slurs for mentally challenged is not even the right word, but that word, the R word, is what they called it back then. And I apologize for that. But and so it's like, nope, nobody talked about it. You'd see people with the cards, but you'd be like, You don't have that." "Nope, I don't have it either." La la la. It was kind of like that. And Sanitarium was the soundtrack. Even that first half of it was more than enough at that point.
I mean, it sounds exactly like what the lyrics are saying as far
Yep.
as your experience, where you are forcefully in a situation where you have no control. You have to go through those motions, and you're being, for lack of a better word, oppressed by the people in charge
Yes.
who you don't agree with what they're doing or what they're telling you to do.
Yeah.
And not to compare
No.
per se, but I mentioned that I listened to this album in full when I was in the military,
Right.
and it was
Right.
my first few years in the military that I was, rooming with Zach, and that was during my lower enlisted days, not necessarily in charge,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and so this album had a lot of direct correlations for me during that time. Battery right off the bat, the battle you mentioned,
Mhm.
I always had the same feeling, artillery batteries, and just that was the way that song felt to me. And then me and my friend would talk about this, how this album, this track, especially the next track,
Oh, yes.
were quite relevant. I mean, we weren't I wasn't in a Skinner box of that nature, as you were saying.
Yeah.
It was more commentary. Like, wow, this is relevant. We would joke about it. Our sarcasm was heavy in that we would quote a lot of these lyrics,
Hmm.
and they would go way over the head of our senior enlisted or officers at the time,
Hmm.
uh, which thankfully they did go over their head.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would have gotten deep shit.
Oh, yeah.
But it was all very relevant, is all
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. Yeah. I'm glad that we could parallel that experience. I mean, just being up against this, like, on this discipline that you fairly, justly or not, you have to deal with it. It's unpleasant. And just and it feels oppressive. It very much does, no matter what.
On the military side, a lot of it goes to just communication where you, as an 18-year-old, you don't
Hmm.
understand.
Yeah.
What they're telling us to do and what we were doing at the time is never explained. The
Hmm.
bigger picture, discipline, cohesion, all that stuff. 10 years later in the military, fully
Yeah.
understood.
Yes.
Life experience and a few trips overseas will do that to you. But at the time, I'm fresh out of high school, and these old crusty guys are, you know, making us do things, and it was just not really understood. So our kickback was music. It was
Yep.
always music, and we would just correlate to the
Way
lyrics.
of, way of coping with it. And that military experience, I must confess I don't have any military experience, but obvious, explicit military lyrics in Disposable Heroes. Disposable Heroes is my favorite track with lyrics on the album.
Really? Okay.
Bar none.
My notes for this particular song is this track is heavy
Mm-hmm.
musically and lyrically.
Mm-hmm. To say the least.
The line that we would often just yell and at certain times was just always, back to the front.
Oh, yeah.
And that
Yep.
that is one that would go over. Yeah, they would think we were falling in line, but we were
Yep.
but it was a direct, sarcastic,
Yep.
swipe at them.
Yes. Yes. Oh.
Back to the front. You will do what I say. When I say back to the front, you will die. When I say you must die. Back to the front. You coward. You should.
And that is what great art does for all of us, right? Enables us to. Anyway, I'm not trying to get too philosophical here,
Privates,
but
go do this.
yep.
Yes, sir. Back to the front.
Yep.
This one definitely kicks it back into high gear
Oh, yeah.
musically. I mean, this one's heavy.
Yes. It may be it's more sustained than Damage Incorporated. And for me, the heaviest on that album are between that and Damage Incorporated, between Disposable Heroes and Damage Incorporated.
This one could be on Kill 'Em All, and it would fit right in.
I don't know. I think it's a little too sophisticated for Kill 'Em All, if I'm being honest.
Well, that would be the reason it wouldn't be.
Yes. Yeah.
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 As
It
far
could
as it's, yeah,
in terms of
I
its
get what you're saying.
aggression. Yeah, but I don't think I mean, yeah, we got Metal Militia and stuff, but even, I hear Kill 'Em All. Kill 'Em All was just sort of like, we're rebelling, but we don't really know what we're rebelling against yet. They're practically teenagers writing and recording that stuff. There's the industry, there's the fake people, all that kind of stuff. But Puppets is more, it's just as rebellious, but it's more mature and systematic. I mean, here we have
Oh,
this,
definitely.
yeah, this whole, just the futility of warfare, the way that it uses people, the way that, the I mean, the title is Disposable Heroes, for crying out loud. I think it's
Oh
still,
yeah, there's no
yeah,
subtext.
no, no.
No, none at all.
But I think it also, like, it is firmly and fully empathetic to the people that are on the front lines.
Yes.
And what it did for me was one of the things that has colored our family. And I don't know how much Mike and Danny have gotten into this, but our grandfather he fought in Southern D-Day. So he was there. I don't know if he was on the front lines, but he was in that battle. I think he was a sergeant by then, a technical sergeant by then, I'm pretty sure. And so his PTSD, which was unacknowledged and never fully processed in his life. And our grandfather had a very positive experience, a very positive influence, I would say, on all of us. I look to him for so many things. It's not even funny. He passed away in 2008. But that song enabled me, even at the age of 9, to feel some of what he felt. And I don't know if that's too much of an extension, but it enabled
Yeah.
me to step into that world of, like, fuck, this is what he went through. This is why he doesn't want to talk about this stuff, you know? And just like that intro, my God, starts off just, and I hear in that sound the tone. And, the culture I'm raised in is 80s Cold War. That's when this thing's coming out. It's going on there. I don't know if anybody was doing this deliberately or consciously or not, but God damn it, they were priming us to be warriors. It was all over the media. Everything I did had a gun. You name it, they were priming us for that. And I knew the sound of machine guns, like, not up close and personal, but from all the cartoons and movies and things, that bum, 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 bum. All I could hear were these fucking cannons, just like, dur, 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 it's like this, dur, 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 dur. It's like the rhythm of some heavy ass artillery. You were in, I don't mean to, I hope I'm not speaking out.
No, I don't want to make any illusions that I was, kicking indoors over there. I'm a signal soldier. I provided the internet.
Okay.
Uh, I mean, I did my convoys with the best of them, and I was there and did what I need to do.
Mm,
Uh, but I was not frontline infantry.
okay.
My experiences were to circle back with better understanding of why the discipline and why the training and breeding of the warrior is needed is because when I did go overseas, I wasn't a private anymore. I had upwards of 30 guys underneath me, and I was that old guy.
More a man, more stripes you wore.
I was that guy who the young soldiers were telling jokes going over my head.
Yeah, now they were right. They were talking about Hoobastank or something, and you're just like,
Yeah. But I will say it is pretty awesome when you're rolling down a convoy and there's speakers blaring out, and it's the GI Joe theme from the '80s.
Yep. Oh
So
God.
I mean, right there on that branding thing you mentioned as far as
Yep.
from the '80s,
Yep.
that I mean, those were the guys in the trucks, in the Hummers going down,
My God.
Route Irish. That was what we were doing, and it was that's what we were playing. And
Wow.
so everybody had this was at the beginning of MP3 players when I was there. Everybody still had, their CD sleeves, but some of us did have especially the combo guys, we were the ones with the Zunes or whatever at the time with, hey, we got 300 songs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just happened to be, cartoon themes from the '80s, but then also this whole album was played all the time out on those convoys. It absolutely was.
Yeah.
Right, and right there with the Team America, theme.
Yes.
So
Exactly. Oh my God. And that, but that, like I said, it let me step into a lot of that, and I hear this heavy artillery or something very heavy, And I pictured my grandfather I didn't know he was in D-Day when I was not. Like that didn't come out until later, but I knew he fought in World War II and he fought battles and he was wounded and I know he got a Purple Heart. Um, and what was I going to say? And, so that I'd always imagined that right at that and it's just like the beginning, it's like there's this heavy fire coming in, and then it stops for a second. And the rest is not a rest. It's panic. It's like, oh, we just took heavy fire and now the really heavy shit is coming. Oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. Like that's how I hear it. It's that slide symbol, whatever that is some big badass thing about to drop out of the sky and kill us all. Like that is how that shit sounds to me.
Incoming is not fun. That one I can attest to.
Yo, and I was able to tap into some of that, and I'm just like, God, that must be what that feels like to some extent. And again, I haven't been there. You have, and I hope I'm not
No, you're good. You're fine. You're fine.
watering down that experience or okay.
Yeah. Both my grandparents fought in Europe as well.
Okay.
One died before I was born, but
Mm.
my other grandfather, he wouldn't talk either.
No.
He would not speak to me, or he just not. No, I'm not saying he wouldn't speak to me about it. It was just never brought up
Right.
until I was actually in the army, and then he started like.
Yeah.
Then it was like he started asking me questions and talking about his time in the military. So that was kind of a neat bonding at the time.
Oh wow.
But yeah, up until that, he had never really mentioned that he was over there.
Well,
It was all just family word of mouth.
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. Our grandfather wouldn't. It'd be little things occasionally, but it would never be acknowledged. And so this again, and he was always like, he was very reserved. Like I mean, if you've seen the wit of Danny and Michael, obviously you're very familiar with it. That's where they get it from. He was one of those people, like he could keep a perfectly straight face and everybody around him would just be falling on the floor laughing, but he'd just be like, oh, and he'd be smoking his Camels and just like, oh, that's pretty funny. Or he'd just smoke like this little and be done with it, like that. But just very reserved. And I don't know if he was like that before or not, because there's no way I was ever going to be able to know that.
Yeah.
That intro then. So there's after that slide when there's incoming, then the really bad shit comes after that. That rhythm right after that, every time I hear that, it morphs from my grandfather in D-Day, realistic, oh my gosh, trauma, to some kind of fucked up Tolkien-esque battle figure that probably looks like something off of the Danzig album cover. Of course, Glenn Danzig's one of James and Lars's favorite musicians. In my imagination, when I'm hearing the song, so there's that slide and then it goes into that, and it morphs into this Tolkien-esque battle where there's these bizarre orc-like skeleton-esque things that are being knocked down by this Danzig-esque female figure that's flying in on a black dragon. And there's this bump, it's like bodies getting thrown left and right by some unstoppable force. And then that like filtered wah melody comes in, that, and that's when the real bad shit. It's like they have arrived and you're dead. There's skeletal hands reaching up from, like gigantic skeletal hands reaching up from under the ground. This dragon is spewing fire all over the place. Like death is here. And then it picks back up. The battle resumes. Nope. You're dead, but you still got to claw each other's eyes out. Like this is fucking Valhalla stuff going on after that. And then, it doesn't really take a breather, but it slows down right before the lyric come in. And of course, the first line is bodies fill the fields I see. Oh,
Yeah.
There's no pulling punches at all.
He paints a picture.
To say the least. No flinching on that one. And I don't think Hetfield ever had any military experience either.
Yeah. I wonder if his family did or not.
Yeah, I wonder about that. I know his parents were Christian Scientists.
Oh.
Yeah. So I don't know if that because I don't know if they had more pacifist leanings that would have precluded them from that, but I know that. But in any case, that that picture just has stood with me. But my favorite part of the song, actually, and this is one of the things that I think gets overlooked in a lot of thrash metal. Thrash to me is at its best when it is aggressive, of course, we all get that, but also progressive and also has a groove. That groove is there. Fucking Public Enemy heard that in Slayer. That's why they sampled him all over the place, right? There
Yeah.
is this intense groove to all thrash metal if you really listen to it. And I don't know why it seems like people can't hear it. They're like, "Oh, Korn invented groove metal." I'm like, "Fuck you," on a number of levels. But not that I'm not trying to diss them, but they didn't invent groove metal. That was there a long time before Korn. And there's the call and response part of Disposable Heroes. And why am I dying? Right, that whole part. You listen to the cymbal work that Lars is doing, and there's just these little flourishes and things that just have this groove that, like, the image that's in my mind during that call and response part is a dance macabre. It is medieval people dancing in the graveyard with relics of their dead relatives. And of course, in my imagination, the dead relatives are popping back up, dancing with them, like the dead are reanimated and dancing along in that whole part. It does that. It did that to me from the get-go listening to it, and it still does it to me to this day. Is just there's this groove and these dead bodies just getting up and just shaking what they got, basically probably the best way, and stuff falling off of them, as they go. And just the way it picks back up so many times, it gets, it never mellows out, but it, takes these little almost pauses because it's like you just can't take anymore, and then goes right back into it. Never, ever, ever lets you up. And then they're like, okay, all right, time to reprise thing that should not be, maybe a little bit with Leper Messiah. And so Leper Messiah, I had an issue with that song. It was another one that I had to fast forward a little when I was a kid, and that I appreciate so much more now. The reason I had to fast forward it, this is almost petty. The kid that I initially borrowed Master of Puppets from, I came to love him to death. I haven't spoken to him since the 20th century. I'm not going to name names. And it wasn't any falling out. It was just sort of drifting apart after middle school.
Yeah.
But he and I had this strange off again, on again friendship all throughout elementary school. And I think some of it was the mutually unacknowledged, yeah, you're in the bad class, aren't you? Kind of thing. I was never quite cool enough sometimes. It was one of those things. And there was a moment where he played Leper Messiah as part of some performance. I don't remember all the context, but I remember him coming in with Leper Messiah and this other guy who was cooler than me, and just having this like jealousy and just like, hey, that's my album. What the no, and that's the one you demanded back from me. And so I had like this weird kind of jealous, angsty stuff about that. And I couldn't really listen to it. And that got compounded because it became a cliche in thrash and then other areas of metal too, to always have a song mocking an evangelist. And I don't know if Metallica started that or not, but you have it Anthrax has Make Me Laugh, Slayer has Jesus Saves, right? Testament, I forget the name of the Testament song, but there's a Testament song that's like about the preacher is a hypocrite. And of course, there's Miracle Man by Ozzy, right? So on and so forth. So it became this like cliche after mid '80s stuff where a lot of my ethos was starting to develop was the Jimmy Swaggart scandal and the Jim Baker scandal. You know, it's like they were, I don't know if they were responding to those things or responding to a deeper vein of hypocrisy, but it seemed like, yeah, that thing is played out. And by the time I was jaded in the '90s, I was like, "Ugh, you know, Leper Messiah is just one of those songs. God damn it." You know, but you go back and listen to it, it has a great groove at the beginning. I mean, just that, and that's what this guy did. And for the intro that he used, him and this other cooler than me guy were walking in. They were basically supposed to do a wrestling intro. You know, like they're walking in like pro wrestlers, and they're doing like this kind of. You'll probably get this one, Steve. This bushwhackers kind of walk.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So they were almost doing that. So like this da 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 da, you know, the little bushwhackers walk, and like it's a very danceable intro. You know, if you
Yeah.
um
I, I mean, I don't want to call this a filler song because there are no bad songs on this album.
no.
But it's probably the lowest rung for me. If I had to rank all eight,
Yeah,
this one would be on
yeah.
the bottom.
Minus thing
It's
that should not be.
for the first 2-3 minutes, it's kind of boring,
Yeah.
but the back half of it is pretty badass.
Yep.
You just got to get through the first half.
Yep. And that sort of invocation of that witchery, right? Yeah, like, oh my gosh, the trap. Yeah, that back half of it is something else. And I think it was that sort of experience with that kid, and then just dragging. And you're right, it drags if you're not preparing for it. And it's like it's danceable though, and then it drags, and it's like, yeah, I'm done. Let's fast forward to my favorite song on the album.
Orion is easily one of the best rock instrumentals of all time.
Oh God, yes, bar none. It's just one of the best instrumentals of all time, I think.
Depending on the time of day and how I mean, Call of Cthulhu and Orion, I mean, they're just I could never rank either one of them as which one is better. They're both
Yeah.
phenomenal, but I would put this one up there. I mean, with Europa or Stevie Ray Vaughan's Little Wing.
Oh,
Just there's
yeah.
this track is a masterpiece.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. I would even I'd put it up there with all instrumental compositional music.
Mhm.
It doesn't matter. Watermelon and Easter hay, Zappa's, like there are people that say, when I die, this is what I want to hear, stuff like that. I'm like, I don't agree with that with Watermelon. And for me, Orion, it's like the, kind of maybe slightly darker twin of that.
I had a burn CD that I made
Mhm.
way back in the day, and it was just rock instrumentals and like Sparks from Tommy
Mhm.
and others in all these tracks, which I totally did not get from Napster. No, not at all.
That's right. Lars, if you're listening, no.
Napster bad. But this was the final track on that particular one because it was just that was the place for it. It was the anchor. It just did tied the whole thing together, and I can't speak more highly of this
Yes.
song.
Yes. It is evocative and it is transformative for me in so many ways. Just the way it fades in. I mean, the song, the whole album takes you on many different journeys. But this to me is just pure transport. And there's so many images that are just really personal and really just beautiful in this song to me. And I'm sure everybody has their own resonance with it. But this one to me begins with a journey in the nighttime. And I knew that the song was Orion, of course. So there's gonna be, I was obsessed. I mean, you're wearing a Star Wars shirt, I can see right now. But so
I am
my
yes.
first love top this one, I was born on George Lucas's birthday, the year what was then Star Wars came out. I always tell people that. I had a kid once,
Nice.
he's like, I was born on Mark Hamill's birthday in 77. I'm like, oh yeah? But that was in high school. I remember that. And I was like, but I'm a Star Wars baby through and through. So space, sci-fi stuff, I was deeply obsessed with that as a kid. I wanted to, be some kind of weird, basically the first thing I ever wanted to be in this life was a Jedi Knight, you know, and back then we didn't really know what they were. The prequels hadn't happened. We're just like, oh, there's Obi-Wan,
Don't give up your dreams.
right.
There's still time.
Well, the second thing I wanted to be was Slash, but what was I going to say? Orion just, it starts off, it's all movement for me. You're being taken, you're riding in the dark car at night, and I'm sure there are many, many, many nights, that I was riding in the backseat of the dark car, avoiding the boys, and Orion was there with me for a lot of that. And, just that way it fades in. Sounds like there's an organ, but I think Cliff Burton was doing something bass there.
I think there's a couple of the solos are bass solos, but they're mistaken for guitar.
A Cliff Burton trademark.
True.
And something that, unfortunately Metallica lost along with him. I think they lost a lot that day. But so just that fade in, those drums, to this day, I maintain that, for all of his crapulence, maybe, in the popular sphere, Lars Ulrich is one of the greatest drummers in my experience and in my life. Certainly underrated, actually.
I think underrated is a good way
Yeah.
to describe Lars. Yeah.
Listen to what he actually does. I mentioned the cymbal work in Disposable Heroes, and then just the stuff here. He ain't just keeping the beat, He's part of this interweaving of creating these rhythms, and they're in there, just right from the start there. Just that first initial melody, that da da da, just coming. Oh my God. And that for me is like that's when the spaceship starts to take off. And then some of those, there's guitar solos and bass solos, or I should say guitar melodies and bass melodies interwoven throughout that whole thing. And, it picks up and it builds up and it builds up. And then that breakdown, oh my God. It is like, it is sunset on a beach on a very distant planet. That's probably the best. I took that first part with those great harmony bends. Whatever. I don't mean to sing too much of it, but I'm probably off pitch anyway. But those great harmonic bends that are there in that breakdown. Then it goes in so many different directions, and I don't know if I can. There's no way that you can ever adequately put it into words. You just have to experience that song, right? But after the melody, there's a part where there's bass and guitar harmonies that are working together that, to me, always invokes, for some strange reason. So in the middle of this journey to all these alien worlds, there's a part where it feels like you're holding a baby. I don't know how to say it other than that.
Okay.
Like you're holding this fragile infant in your arms, in that, like, in the softer part where the melody kind of picks up after the breakdown, before the drums come back in full force and back to that original reprise of the original heavier rhythm. There's just these few melodic moments where it's like there's this little, you're holding this infant and they're smiling at you. I don't know where that comes from, but that's been with me since the age of 9.
I'm like picturing your vision in like the animated Kiss stuff from back in the day.
Yeah.
Especially the space, traveling on a guitar.
Yep.
I think, they land on now they've found a baby and they're on an escort mission for the rest of the song.
Right.
So,
Yeah. That could very well be it. The Laura Danon or something. It's like, Anyway, I don't know, but exactly like, oh, here's this precious little. Yeah, now we gotta, this is why we're marching back off into the galaxy. Exactly. Something like that. Because it definitely marches back off into the galaxy, and like that's the rest of it.
Need to see a Mandalorian montage set to Orion.
Yeah.
Somebody out there needs to do that.
There we
Yeah,
go. There we
it's perfect.
go. Yeah, and if I could, I'll have to tell them the specific part where I picture somebody holding the infant, and the Disney owes us 15% for that. They'll anyway. No, they'll sue us for yeah, just having have the Grogu on something else, right?
There you go.
But and it just it goes back into that rhythm, and it's you're back on that journey, but now it's the reprise to me is like you are definitely floating through the galaxy, and the way that it fades out always invokes for me those initial feelings of seeing the Star Wars scrolls at the beginning when the words start to fade out, and to me they always look like the engines of spaceships receding in distance. And it's that kind of fade out. The stellar fleet is moving off, getting ready to jump to hyperspace or something.
No, that's a really cool visualization of the and honestly, any great instrumental allows you to do that.
Oh yeah, exactly.
And I mean, that's perfect for this.
Yes. Is there anything more you want to say about Orion?
No, I think we've pretty much covered it all.
Because there's Damage Incorporated.
There is the finale.
Yes. Which I only heard the intro and right up to Dying All Our Bodies Work as One, and then it would cut off in my original tape. That's what it was. So luckily they didn't hear the possibly the greatest line in all of metal, fuck it all to fuck and no regrets. But I never heard that line until 4 or 5 years later.
Did you get the weird whispers though? I mean, you got to the Damage Incorporated?
No.
You didn't get to those?
Yeah.
Oh,
And I remember seeing people with the t-shirts that said "Honesty is my only excuse," Damage Incorporated on them. I remember seeing people with those t-shirts back then and being like, damn it, that must be in the part that's cut off. Like I didn't get it at first. Like, that's a Metallica lyric? Oh. But the intro is those volume swells. You listen carefully to that. That's the 3 of them. Swell it, riding the volume knobs in their instruments.
oh, really?
I always thought it was keyboards. And the weird thing is, me as a 9-year-old kid, I hated keyboards. I don't know why, but I couldn't deal with things that I thought were like computer generated or artificial. I'll blame George Lucas for that one, where it's like, you've turned off your target computer, right? And I've got to use the force. It's got to be natural and organic.
Gotta be real.
Right, exactly. And so I was like, that's, I hear Bruce Dickinson from Iron Maiden saying, you can't play heavy metal music on a synthesizer. And they did in the next album. That's another story.
All those early Queen albums, they put it on the liner notes, no synthesizers.
Right.
Just big capital letters on the liner notes.
Yeah. And so there was a part of me, now I'm okay with it, but I remember thinking like, even though this is keyboards, I still like it. But what it really is that they're riding the volume knobs on the instruments, and they've got these lovely delay effects after it that, to me, other people are going to get their own images, of course, but to me, those evoke sunrise big time. And it's like if the sun set and we blasted off into the galaxy, beginning of this, the sun is rising, this kind of cold morning, and there's these little pockets of warmth that are popping up as the mist is melting off. And it's just like this great image of just like, for whatever reason, being out in nature and mist burning off in the morning. It's very tranquil. It's like one of the most relaxing things in the entire world. And then, of course,
The hard left turn.
yep, the hardest left turn there is on that album for sure. Just that, it's a punch in the face. You know, it is literally a punch in the face, that first heavy, you know, it's like they give you fair warning because it fades into that, you know, and then, oh crap, you know, and that to me is the fight. That song is the final battle.
Metallica does that well, where they have those classical style intros, probably influenced by some classical piece that I don't even know.
No, they with Cliff Burton it died with him, right? You know, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then just I just love those hard left turns where it just comes out of nowhere,
Yep.
and then instead it hits you. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, those classical that like I said, those were the big things for me was that progressive, which and it was better if the progressive was well versed in classical. And that's what made a good thrash album for me. It still does in many ways. But the thing about the intro to Damage is that it's almost ambient. You know, it's really not that melodic. Like there's harmonies, there's a certain melodic structure to it, but it's more just about like these, you know, like these sort of growing noises and things. It's very, you know, it's not as structured as it's certainly not a riff the way that say the intro to Welcome Home Sanitarium is. Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then just that to me is that where it comes in with that punch in the face is probably the hardest moment in the album for me.
I can see that.
Yeah. And
Yeah, definitely.
and then, you know, it just that one doesn't let up after that. It is just brutality. It is a fight. It is freaking, you know, no holds barred, bare knuckles, uh, like people picking up body parts and beating people to death with them. Like that kind of the stuff that I picture. So, you know, and
I always thought that the whispers were weird. That's just they always threw me.
yeah,
Yeah, they just kinda come out of nowhere. Because, like I say, the rest of the song is hard,
it's true.
and then
Yeah.
Damage Incorporated. It's
But
just
to me, that doesn't, though. To me, that's even more menacing. It's like we have just pounded you into a bloody pulp, and now it's like it's just a little,
yeah, if you say it in a taunting manner to someone who's you've just,
yeah,
taken down, I could see that.
yeah. I guess that's how I always pictured it.
Yeah.
And to me, it's not letting up because it's no mercy. I literally just, you know, a few years later, of course, is Mortal Kombat. I literally just ripped your spine out, and that's the last thing I say to your head as I'm holding it in my hands. There we go, something like that.
There you go. That makes sense.
Yeah, there we go. Finish him. But and just those. I mean, I'm envious that I never got the full effect of that song until it was seventh grade when I got the copy of that when I got an original of Master of Puppets finally. The reason why is my parents gave us $2 allowances. Tapes in the mid to late 80s were $10. So it took me 5 weeks to save up for a tape. And I had my dub of Master of Puppets. So I'm like, gotta get the rest of the Metallica catalog. My next one was Ride the Lightning, which for me was actually a letdown.
Oh, yeah.
Not a letdown, but I should say letdown is maybe too strong. But to me, it never quite achieved the mastery of Master of Puppets. The production is rougher and gnarlier on it. The guitar tones are muddier. There's this kind of precision in puppets that really characterizes more like we're transitioning into the later 80s now. Ride is more like this is the last gasp of the early 80s. And now we're transitioning into the later 80s. Things are crisper, things are clearer. Here's some Guitar Geek stuff for you. they were using exclusively these older Marshall amps. Like from what I understand on Lightning, and I go back and listen to your episode too. Basically, Fleming Rasmussen was sourcing all of the Marshalls he could find on the European subcontinent. Uh, but they had some Marshalls, and they also had a Mesa Boogie Mark II C Plus, which Hetfield and Hammett dubbed Captain Crunch. That sound, to me is the tone of thrash and the definitive tone for a metal sound for me. It's interesting enough because my uncle, not on my daddy's side, on my dad's side, is also a guitarist, and he was actually active in a number of like more glam metal bands in the early '80s.
Okay.
He hated Metallica. He's like, I don't get this sound at all. Like, why do they want it to sound like they suck all the mid range out of it? I don't like this. He's like, there's no body to the, there's no body to the tones and this kind of thing. I remember him complaining about it.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, yeah. And then he would like 10 years later, he's like, yeah, I'm trying to get that sound like Metallica gets. I was like, that's the one you ridiculed me for when I was not, that kind of thing. So that Mesa sound was something that I didn't realize what it was, of course, at the time. God, it was probably took me 20 years because I had a divorce from Metallica. And that divorce came in the form of the Black Album.
Okay.
I was 14 when it came out. And I remember I was at a friend's house, not the same friend that I swiped the Puppets tape from. I grew up in Waukesha, Wisconsin. That's where most of my growing up was. My parents moved there when I was in first grade, about halfway through first grade. But I was at a friend's house in Waukesha, and the Enter Sandman video came on. This was the summer after 8th grade for me. You could watch my heart ripping in half. They fucking sold out. Not Metallica. Not my heroes. Say it ain't so, Joe. It was like one of those moments. Like, I can't believe, I mean, looking back on it, I can see it was pretty much inevitable. And I'm sure Cliff Burton was rolling over in his grave the moment they hired Bob Rock. But, if not before.
But it got them on MTV. Probably, doubled their fan base.
It probably quintupled their fan base. Yeah, and from a commercial and business standpoint, it took Metallica from a mom and pop shop into a Fortune 500 company.
Yeah, I mean, Black Album was what? I don't know, 91, 92?
91.
And 91? So, I mean, I didn't get MTV until late 1990.
Okay. Yep.
And so 91 was like I was glued to MTV.
Yeah. What year to be glued to it.
Yeah, I mean, it was great, but that's where I was like, who are these guys? I hadn't heard Metallica at all. It wasn't part of my musical. I mean, I came from rural Illinois,
Oh, yeah.
and there was a lot of John Mellencamp, a lot of Eagles, which is all great music.
I've seen him on the porch in Spring Valley, John Mellencamp. That's what I always thought about. I was like, hey,
Hey, is that the Tasty Freeze? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that was most of the music that I heard.
Yep.
So it wasn't until MTV that I was like, okay, who are these guys?
Yep.
And it was I'll say it was tame enough to lure me in, and I liked it.
Yep.
And then my musical taste, grew from that. Had I at the time probably heard, if I had heard Lightning or Puppets at the time, I probably wouldn't have gravitated towards it. It was too much for my 11-year-old mind at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the Black Album was perfect for me as my gateway drug into Metallica.
Yes.
And then so Load and Reload were my letdowns.
It's like, don't worry, they'll disappoint you too. Just right, exactly. Oh, but yeah, that's how it was. And when I construct the narrative in my head now, knowing what I know, I mean, I probably didn't realize that they had a bass player that died until I finally saw something about it in a Metal Edge magazine in like '88.
So did you notice the difference between Puppets and Justice for All?
I did. but I liked Justice.
I still like Justice.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, it's a great album to me.
yes, I agree. It's a great album. I would put Puppets as the pinnacle personally, and I think Justice, especially nowadays, I see as a step down. In '88, when I was 11, when Justice came out, though, it was like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. They've got these. Well, now we're talking about Justice, basically, but they've got the great classically fade in stuff at the beginning. And they've got all the complex melodies and all the aggression. It's all in there. But it basically, to me, in '88, it sounded like an updated version of the band. I was like, yeah, this is great. Didn't take me to the same places that Puppets did, but I was ready for it. I was ready for Justice in Eve. And that was actually the gateway for one of my best friends to this day. That's how I got him into Metallica. That was sixth grade. This is a whole other story, but weird. Yeah, he lives in Stockholm, Sweden. We haven't seen each other in person since the Black Album came out, but we communicate regularly. But yeah, that's another story for another time. Basically, Puppets was my gateway drug to everything. I initially, when I heard it, I wanted to be a drummer. I was that inspired by the rhythms, just the aggression.
Okay.
Yeah, and like just kind of pounding everything out, So I didn't even know who Lars Ulrich was because I just had my dubbed thing. I remember there's these guys. I think I got their names together. Like it took me probably until sixth grade to piece that together, and maybe fifth grade. I had, but so I'm piecing it together. At first, I wanted to be a drummer. I was like, yeah. And then I saw more pictures of Kirk Hammett, and I was like, I really like the melody too. And I was starting to change more towards guitar. And then I saw Slash, and I was like, that that's me. That's what I want to be right there. Man of mystery hiding in the corner.
He had the sound and the image all packaged into one. He
Absolutely.
did. Well, he does. I
Still
mean,
does. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Even in a fucking Capital One commercial, he's in a Capital One commercial. But
Everybody's got to pay the bill.
yeah. That's you come to realize that. But when you're 14, you don't have those critical sensibilities. It's like, wait a minute. This was the band. This is back to the Black Album of Metallica. This was the band who literally had Kill Bon Jovi on the headstock of one of their guitars. And now they're working with Bon Jovi's producer.
That's funny.
Yeah, that was my experience of it. It's really funny. The drummer in my band has a much more similar. Are you 81, 80, 82?
80.
80? That's your Mike's.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike's age.
Yeah. So our drummer's Danny's age 81, and he has the same experience in the Black albums, basically. Like he said, there was a day when he went, and he's 10 years old. He went to a record shop and he got a copy of Nevermind and the Black Album. And that was it for him.
There you go.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah.
So, Master Puppets made the top of your list. What would be on your short list?
Okay. So, Appetite for Destruction, Matthew Sweet, Girlfriend.
Okay.
Yep. That was another hugely transformative album for me. It's hard to piece together all of everything, but probably Ask the Ages by Sonny Chirac. I don't know if you know that or not.
I have no idea what that is.
So, Sonny Chirac was a great jazz musician. His greatest claim to fame was that he did the intro music for Space Ghost Coast to Coast on Cartoon Network. And I think he died shortly before that was released. Like he recorded it.
Oh, yeah.
He died that year in 94. Yeah. Chirac is the only jazz guitarist that has ever been listed in heavy metal lists and top tens and stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sonny Chirac. Oh my God. My three biggest influences. I would say Metallica is just my general influence as a musician and probably as a bass player. But my top three influences as a guitarist are Robert Quine, Sonny Chirac, and Slash. Interestingly enough, I don't know if you know who Robert Quine is.
Yeah, let's say, forgive my ignorance. Who's that?
Robert Quine played on Matthew Sweet's Girlfriend. He's
Okay.
responsible for the leads on the title track, for example, the famous song Girlfriend. All that crazy out there lead work, that's Robert Quine.
Yeah. I know
Uh,
that song, but I couldn't name you another one. I'm
don't
not
worry about it.
not well versed in his catalog.
Yeah. He played with Lou Reed quite a bit. He played on the Blue Mask, played with a whole bunch of people. He was in the CBGB scene.
He got brought up in our classic rock roundtable that we did during
Okay.
season 1.
Okay.
So, yeah, he got mentioned.
Yeah. So it's like Danny better know who it is. Mike likes Pearl Jam, so no, that's enough. We're gonna be at loggerheads about that one no matter what. But
Well, we'll get you in some of our live streams next year.
yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah, they get a bit rowdy at times with, some conflicting music tastes.
Awesome.
So,
That's the best. But yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff. It's hard to sift through. But I mean, those are very much top albums. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Seventh Son of a Seventh Son by Iron Maiden.
oh,
Yeah, another one that our Mike, Danny, and I are our Uncle Joe. My parents requested. You might know Joe Proco. He had an electronics repair thing in the valley for like 20 years or something like.
Hmm.
But he's still there. You know, my mother's brother. But Joe's a very cool guy. But he had to read through the lyrics of Seventh Son of a Seventh Son because I bought it at the Peru Mall when I was down visiting for a week. And I was like, yeah, I'll get this. And my mom's like, you want a tape? You know, she's talking to me on the phone. I'm like, yeah. Like, oh, you got to have somebody look at it. My uncle's like, there's nothing bad, Nick. So, but that, oh my God, there better not be any bad lyrics in it. Oh,
I guess this was before any, parental labels.
it was right around the time they were starting to come out because
Oh,
my
yeah?
dad, to bless my dad for this, he he let me buy Appetite for Destruction. I had to save up for it. It was like the third tape I was able to save up. I remember very distinctly buying it in the Kmart in Waukesha and my dad saying, don't let your mom know I let you buy it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and God, there's so I did Seventh Son. Um, you know, it's either gonna be Volume 4 or Sabotage by Black Sabbath. It's hard for me to do between those. Um, so Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back by Public Enemy. It's gonna be on the short list too. Great.
That's, yeah, Public Enemy is not one that I don't think anyone's mentioned on any short list so far. So, yeah, that's a new one.
Yeah, I hear that album in my head on a daily basis, I think almost. Rain in Blood. Slayer.
I had another roommate in the military that was big into Slayer. He was a bass player.
Oh, yay. Yeah. Awesome. So yeah, Rain in Blood is, I don't know if it's that or Seasons in the Abyss. It's the peak of that band for me.
Okay.
That's gotta be one of those. I like South of Heaven a lot, but Rain in Blood is like, it's a nonstop. It doesn't let up. Like there's no breaks. There's no real, there's sort of breakdown, but not really. Actually, my current band, the Night Howls, I originally joined them as a bass player. And one of my favorite moments in my life as a musician was there was a moment at a practice there. We were going to do a gig. It was the first gig I was going to do playing bass with them. And they're like, oh, we need one more set for the song. And we were like, we've been fooling around with Raining Blood. And we did it. And just like playing that song for the first time, there's video of it somewhere, just a smile on my face. I'm like, ah, this was kid in a candy store stuff right
Pure
there.
joy.
Yes, exactly. That song grooves so hard. Oh my God. Like there's so many places when there's just like pure aggression, but then there's just so many just great grooves in it. Like the sort of breakdown where it probably goes from 180 beats per minute to 160 beats per minute or something, right? The whole thing where he's going off about souls from my treasure is past. Now their ornaments dripping above and like all that kind of stuff. Sorry. I don't mean to keep, now we're way off puppets.
And there's a lot of people out there that are, heavy headbanging. It's not my thing. It's all trash. There's a lot of technique and there's a lot of
Yes.
art in there that it can go unappreciated if someone just doesn't listen to it. And that what goes with any genre of music. My recommendation to anyone out there is don't write off anything just because it has that label, because puppets in particular, has that just a high level of technique that
Yep.
we've hammered in already on this podcast.
Oh, yes.
But the Slayer and Iron Maiden, if you get past some of the lyrics are nonsense.
Yes.
Rain and Blood, blah, 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 okay, Angel of Death, oh yeah, sure. But when you
That's
strip
actually
that,
about Josef Mengele.
what's that?
That's about the Nazi doctor Josef Mengele.
Angel of Death.
Mm-hmm. And it is
Oh.
not an homage. It is the full horror of what that piece of shit did. Yeah.
That's another level of the technique that
Yep.
some of the lyrics, if you can get past, if you're not into the delivery of them, if you actually get into the lyrical content, they can be deep, they can be meaningful, and you make them away with a new appreciation of it, because
Yes.
it is definitely, to me, it's a very specialized genre of music that is not easy to do.
Completely agree. It requires absolute mastery of the instrument. For anybody that's getting guitar, that iconic riff in the title track, Master of Puppets, is all fucking downstrokes. James and Kirk have admitted to using up and down strokes when they've played it. And Dimebag Darrell actually like chided them about that. He's like, come on, gotta stick with it. But the recorded things, all downstrokes. If you can pull that off, you've got some serious speed and precision in your right hand.
And then you get into the guitar harmonies, so they're
Yes.
playing that fast.
Yeah.
In harmony, wow.
Yep. Exactly. That is unparalleled musicianship, and so metal musicians in general. I mean, just extremely high level. And there's a lot of crosstalk. I mean, for example, probably one of the greatest metal guitarists of all time is Alex Skolnick of Testament. Skolnick has a jazz trio that he tours with regularly. You
Oh,
know,
that's cool.
yeah, and there's such crosstalk between jazz, classical, and metal, and it's unappreciated by people that are put off by the prima facie aesthetic of metal, the first phase, right? Aesthetic of metal, if you will.
Well, before we wrap this up, please tell our listeners if you're working on anything, where they could find you, or anything you'd like to pitch.
Oh, sure. You can find me, Night Howls, Wisconsin. There's two Night Howls. There's one that's in New Mexico, and then there's us who are in Wisconsin. So it's nighthowls.wi. We are working on some new material, which will feature my guitar and vocals for the first time. And of course, the other guitar and vocals, and absolutely fantastic metal inspired, drumming. I wear many hats. I've realized that in my life, but I play bass, sing, and do guitar in that band now. And I teach at UW Whitewater at Rock County. If anybody ever wants to come and like learn philosophy or religious studies or women's and gender studies from the perspective of a metalhead, I'd be interested to talk any of those things with
That
any.
sounds like a fun class, actually. You got to title it that way, though.
I should, metalhead
Right?
perspectives on gender. Something like that. You'd be surprised, right? There'll be some new Night House stuff that we're hoping to have up by the summer. It's going to take us a while because we all got lives, I guess. But I don't know if there's anything that's not too academic that I can announce. But I don't know what else to say.
Well, Rick, I'd like to thank you for your time today. It was a pleasure to sit and talk with you about Metallica's Master of Puppets.
The pleasure was all mine, Steve. It was wonderful to meet you, and I'm so glad to talk about my favorite Metallica album with you.
Yeah, we'll have you on again. We'll get you on the live streams, and this was fun. A lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun for me too. Thank you so much.
Someone may claim Appetite for Destruction, though. You never know.
If that's in the works, that's okay.
It's not currently, but season 4 is a long way off. This is the kicking off season 3.
If nobody's claimed it, I'm gonna stake mine.
I'd like to thank you for listening to Music Rewind, a podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. If you enjoyed today's episode, there are many ways to help the show, such as our Patreon or affiliate links in the show notes. The easiest way, though, is to give the show a rating or comment wherever you listen. We really do appreciate it. Thank you again, and as I always say, listen to the full album. Until next time.
A podcast from the Sidereal Media Group. Back to you, anchors.